we have work to do. So
yeah, it's good.
Yes, that's about right. We should all take some big deep breaths.
Absolutely. I feel like these calls have been so helpful, and I'm so thankful, like more than ever, for Reframe. But I feel like that, in the middle of the week, like we don't have the calls enough.
Yes. We've got a bunch of folks joining, so we'll wait a few more minutes before officially getting started. We may have a few non-Reframe members joining us today. Apparently there was a group of some other organizations planning something for Thursday, I think, and so we're trying to encourage them to join us here as well and try to spread the Reframe love to as many home repair groups as possible. I know there are some folks who can't make it today. I think Ed and Chris both said they're on a different webinar about the same topic. I'm not sure if they're on the same one or something different, but I'm sure there's hundreds of webinars similar to this today. But I do think it's helpful for us as home repair nonprofits to talk specifically about how the legislation is impacting us or what we're already thinking about doing with it. So. See lots of folks joining. This is great. I don't think we've ever had such good turnout for webinars. Popular topic.
Definitely.
Rebecca, just curious, can you hear me? I'm going to take myself off mute, but this is Andy with AdventureServe, and I don't have video, but I'm listening in.
Yep, I can hear you, Andy. Glad you joined us.
Perfect.
Great.
What'd you say? No.
We'll just wait a couple more minutes and get started right at 1:30 Eastern here. Hi, Jenna. Glad you could join. We are just hanging out for another minute, waiting for a few more folks to join. We get started here pretty soon. Hi, Gina.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So my plan for today is we'll take turns sharing a quick update on what's happened in our organizations in the last week. I know not everybody knows everybody, so maybe we'll start with introduction, your name, your organization, your city, and then just a brief update on what's changed for you in the last week. And if we've got multiple people from the same organization, probably we'll just have one person share that. Our plan is to talk for about 45 minutes about things that are specific to camp model groups, what we're calling it, mission trip model, outside volunteers, serving for a week at a time, that kind of thing. And then around 2:15, we're going to transition to talking about other program models. You all are welcome to hang around for that time as well. It may get repetitive at some point. Let's see, I've got 1:30 here on my clock, so we will officially get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our third weekly COVID-19 Impact for Home Repair Nonprofits webinar. I'm glad to see you all today, and sorry for the circumstances that's bringing us all together. I know it's a really stressful and anxious time for everybody, but hopefully we can provide some support and information for each other to make things just a little bit easier. So we'll start with some quick introductions. You could share your name, organization, location, and then if one person from each organization could share an update about what has changed for you in the last week, if you've made any new decisions or if you're asking any new questions, that kind of thing. Let's see, I will call you out based on just how you're showing up on my screen here, and then if there's anybody else from your organization, we'll lump them together. Harold, you're up first.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Harold Naylor with Good Neighbors Home Repair in southeastern Pennsylvania and northern Delaware. We are we're operating kind of in a skeleton crew, and we're still debating about what to do about this summer, but we have a very small 2-week summer camp, which is in late June and late July. So we're less affected than all the rest of you, but I'm interested in your perspective. So carry on.
Thanks, Sarah. If everybody could mute themselves or they're not talking, that'll help keep down the background noise. Brian, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm Brian Smith. I'm the Executive Director for UM Army. We got a couple of other UM Army staffers on the phone today here with us, and excited to be here. Just a quick update on where we are. We have college young adult camps that begin in May, and we have camps every week of the summer from the first week of June, actually the last day of May, through the first week of August. And so we're just kind of at this point in time creating a timeline for if we are going to need to cancel, when we would do that, what we would do, talking through contingency plans and things. I'm excited for Bailey to be on the call today and share kind of her thoughts and plans. And we're in the process of kind of trying to look at that and figure out how UM Army might be able to adopt and change and do some of the same kind of things. So.
Great. And who else is on with UM Army? I think Darlene, right? Gina, Jennifer, Scott. Great, wonderful. Thank you all. Megan?
Yeah, hey everyone. Sierra Service Project, Megan Walsh. We're based in Sacramento, California, but we work all over the West Coast. And our summer program is set to start in late June. And we start training our staff in early June, however. So right now we're trying to punt to May. We've been getting some pressure to, make a decision, but really everyone's been okay waiting and seeing. And I think our later summer schedule plays into that a little bit. And I have reached out to our community contacts to just say, hey, do you want us? Tell me from your opinion, is it safe to come? And, we have some communities in rural places, obviously you all do too, that said, we don't have cases here yet. Local folks have become pretty anti-tourist. So how can we be smart about that? Maybe the time will be right later in the season when the economy needs to be picking back up and it's safe to travel around, but just trying to pay attention to that. So no decision, probably won't make one for a few weeks at least.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Bailey, I'm excited to hear your plans. Share with us and introduce yourself first too, for those who don't know you.
Hi, I'm Bailey Faulkner. I'm the Executive Director of Ozark Mission Project, and one of our team members, Hannah French, is also on this call. We are a small staff. Hannah and I are the only 2 full-time employees, and we are in Arkansas, and we're a summer camp model. We have groups come from pretty much all over Arkansas and some from Louisiana, and we have 13 camps during the summer, and our camps are actually at churches. We don't own a facility or anything like that. And we rely heavily, just like most of you, on our summer camp model and income and our programming to help go on. And so tonight we have our board meeting. I've been brainstorming and kind of ran the idea by Brian before we've presented it all to our board. So this is not, I don't know if everyone is going to go along with our plan B, but Hannah and I have really thought about like how can we keep engaging with our campers and our neighbors and do it in a safe way that does not put anyone at risk. So we have decided that what we'd like to do is partner with nursing homes across the state of Arkansas and do kind of like how we're doing like a Zoom call right now with what we would call our neighbors in nursing homes, and do kind of like a oral communication type interview where we have what we use our morning watch devotional. We would have questions already written out and everything about like what the struggles that they've gone through in their life and how they've gotten through that, and have dialogue with our campers, and then move our summer camp model to the fall, where the campers that all get to meet each other through our virtual camp experience will then get to meet each other later in the fall and do hands-on activities like building wheelchair ramps and painting houses and doing yard work. We feel like that is offering an additional part to our ministry. Instead of using the word canceled, we are postponing what summer normally would look like. We don't want to make any decisions, of course, right this second. Arkansas is like slowly, we're having events canceled already in July. So we obviously, this is probably, summer camp's probably not going to happen in Arkansas the way that we've always seen it, but we're not going to, our timeline is not to make that decision until after annual conference is canceled in May and school is canceled for the rest of the year. So we have all those different timelines. So we'll see. Hopefully that idea helps some of you. But the thought of telling our kids, our campers, hey, you've lost school, you've lost everything else, and now you're not going to have summer camp. It's too much to process. So we're hoping that this can be an alternative for now.
Great, thanks for sharing. I love creative thinking. Desperate times call for desperate measures, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Up next, I think would be either Jenna or Andy. One of you want to share?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and if Jenna wants to add anything, she can. Jenna just got back from maternity leave, so she's excited about all the craziness she's walked back into. If she doesn't have enough in her own home with a small child. We were thinking we would just follow the great ideas everybody else at Reframe is telling us about, or taking a path of Christ and just hugging lepers and going against all guidelines of the state. One of those two options. Haven't decided yet. That's a little bit of my jest and sarcasm for you. We currently working on a contingency plan of normally we do about a 3-week training, so we might look at shortening that to 2 weeks. And like some of your programs out there, we normally do about 8 weeks of summer service and adventure programs with Adventure Serve Ministries, kind of start and staff training normally in mid-May and going through through early August. And this year we would try to back it up and potentially start around May 31st with staff training. I've just been thinking, maybe even I got it from one of you guys, is the idea of shortening our training by doing some Zoom remote training before our official in-person training begins. And again, our hope is everything clears so that we can still run summer programming, but we are recognizing some of our partner agencies and homeowners may be hesitant for us to step in. Another idea that I got from a Reframe webinar last week is directing some of our service projects on our camp property instead of partner agencies and homeowners, if those groups are acceptable of that. But we've already seen a serious drop in our participants, and we're definitely concerned. So that's Adventure Serve's update for you.
Thanks, Andy. Let's see, Carson, you want to share?
Of course. Hey, everybody. My name's Carson with the restoration team here in Houston. Right now, most production is pretty much stalled. We have a lot of local volunteers that come in, as well as all the out-of-towners that are going to be coming in the summer. Right now, we've pretty much put a hold on all the locals. We are sending out small work teams of staffers to work in homes where the families aren't living in it. But for the summer, we have, starting June 1 into August, so far none of the out-of-town groups have canceled yet. I imagine some of the registrations will go down, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For the time being, we've been using this time to work on a lot of trainings, like some video exercises of how to hang sheetrock, stuff like that, use power tools. and our staff has been using, we've been working a lot with the local food banks as well, to try and stay busy, try and keep us in the community, and to give opportunities for our volunteers to do.
Great, thanks, Carson. That reminded me, if anyone else is looking for videos that already exist, we do have quite a few different construction videos in our resource library from a few different organizations. If you log into the membership portal and go to the video library, you have to search by year or look for construction, and there's a bunch of videos in there, in case that's helpful for anybody else trying to train staff, not in person. Let's see, Todd?
Hey guys, good afternoon. Good morning for some of you. I'm the executive director for the Jeremiah Project, and we are based out of Virginia and run traditional work camps, summer work camps out of Virginia and West Virginia. Our camps primarily are June and July, and grateful to be able to be a part of the group today to hear how everyone else is doing. We had planned, the board of directors had planned on meeting again and making some final decisions 1st of May, but things are moving very rapidly here in Virginia. They just issued a stay-at-home order through June 10th in Virginia, which has a lot of people concerned. Got an email from a church yesterday that had planned on bringing about 25 people, and they said, we've got 2 people that want to come. So just trying to figure out how to navigate. I know there's stuff that we can't control that on the ministry side of it. We've got churches that can't fundraise. We've got church families that are unemployed, and so it's just a kind of a domino effect. And so just trying to figure out how to navigate that, and haven't made any decisions at this point. As far as whether we're going to have camps at all, or as someone else mentioned, maybe delaying it and doing some things later. So just trying to figure it out. So looking for some collective wisdom, and anything we can learn today would be great.
Good, thanks for
Sorry
joining.
to jump in.
Go ahead.
Sorry to jump in, but just to clarify, you said that Virginia is issuing stay at home until June 10, because that impacts all of us.
Yes.
Virginia.
Yeah, that came out yesterday.
I know ASP is talking a lot about it right now. I don't think we have anybody on the call from there, but ASP actually hosts their summer staff training in Virginia. And so that will probably be the end of their traditional experience. I don't know if they're going to try to move it to a different place or delay it or just cancel altogether, but I imagine that's going to impact a lot of folks. Yeah. Let's see, Blueprint Ministries. You guys want to talk next? Let's see, Dee Dee, I think you're still muted. Dee Dee, we can't hear you.
Oh my gosh,
There
sorry.
we go.
You know, I am so old. I'm trying to
No, you're fine. It's okay. We've all been there.
grateful to have a staff that is patient to walk through it with me. But our board has met, and we are using the word flexible. We have not made a decision on anything yet, but we are creating scenarios that go kind of along with what all of y'all are saying, whether camp has to cancel completely for the summer, or we do a partial summer, or we do partial groups coming each week, or we just flip and try to do day work. If the expectation is we can't have, you know, more than 50 people gather. I don't know what it is at that time. Right now we're being limited to about 10 people or less, and the social distancing, which really, until they kind of lift that scenario, I don't know that we'll be able to do any kind of anything. It's kind of hard to social distance on these small roofs with 10 people up there. But so we're kind of, I think, like the rest of you all, we have said to our groups, and Ron, I'll let you speak a little further to that, what you're telling the youth pastors right now. And
yeah, so Dee mentioned there's multiple scenarios. You know, we've been in conversation with a lot of the local like church youth camps in terms of their timeline. And I feel like we're going to have a good hunch in 2 weeks, but we're kind of aiming at May 1st to try to know what our decision is, whether that would be internally, I think a most likely scenario would be a partial summer. And so we've got our camp schedule broke up into 3-week blocks. And so the first 3 weeks, the second 3 weeks, the last 3 weeks, that if we were to, eliminate something, that we would most likely start with the first 3 weeks, with the hopes that possibly those last 6 weeks are still on the table. I'd say 75% of our client base, our churches, are longtime partners, and so we're trying to be transparent in our timeline, knowing that there is some stuff that is within our control, and there's a lot of stuff that's outside of our control. And in terms of deadlines, I think that we're prepared that this to be a summer of grace, and that deadlines are going to be hard. I mean, we obviously have to have a deadline at which we make a decision of whether or not we're going to operate, but I think to some degree this is a faith endeavor for us, and so we're really trying to work well with the long-term partners that we've had. So.
Thank you. Let's see, conference office. You want to introduce yourself? Share for a minute. Thanks.
Yes, sorry, I didn't realize I had signed in under that one. So
You're fine.
My name is Claire Condrey. I'm grateful to Brian who shared with me about today's meeting and let me jump in. I work for the Central Texas Conference for the United Methodist Church, and we have a mission organization, Central Texas Conference Youth and Mission. It's a mouthful. And we do all of our events happen the same week. So we do several camps the same week in June, and then just a few the same week in July. So we are, same as y'all, looking at trying to figure out if we're going to have to cancel or not, and developing different communication for that, because all of my communication has to go through our conference office, so it takes some approval. We're looking at May 1 as our deadline to actually had a conversation with the youth director yesterday that was really helpful to me. I had been really trying to think of the youth directors and the leadership as far as when they would need to know if we were going to cancel. So I was kind of pushing for an earlier date, but what she shared with me was, she said she could not imagine having to tell her kids that one more thing is canceled right now. So she was much happier with having a little bit more of time, since everything is just getting canceled and canceled and canceled for the students, kind of like Bailey was saying. So that relieved some pressure for me as far as kind of having a misconception maybe of what you thinking as far as their schedule goes. So yeah, that's where we are right now. And we're looking at some backup plans. But for us, it's still a little early to try to develop those, because we don't know what that would be, just like all of y'all. Depending on what would be allowed, could we be able to do, local missions during that week and try to connect our teams virtually, so they still get that connected experience, or will we have to look at offering something like that, but in July? So still working through all of it, but I'm glad to be able to join y'all today. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks for sharing that. It's helpful. Ed, you're up next.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Ed Gloniger. I'm with the Catholic Diocese of Arlington. We run a work camp program every year and have done so for about 30 years. We, over the last several years, we bring about 800 kids into a school for a week, and we visit about 130 sites and do home improvement projects. And right now, we're not sure what to do. As I think Todd mentioned, the governor stated yesterday, the governor of Virginia stated that we're under a stay-at-home order until June 10th, and whether that will get lifted or modified or amended remains to be seen. But like many of you, we're identifying contingency options, both for our volunteers and for those that we serve, that were counting on us. Whether we'll do weekend work, extend this out through the week, have something similar later in the year, later in the summer, remains to be seen. We are facing losing attendance, participation of teens, but that also would include adult leaders. As their schedules are going to get changed, we're finding people have meetings have been changed to that week and they can't go, things of that nature. We also are not really doing as many site surveys right now, which we need to do to get enough projects to serve what ultimately we won't be able to do, which is that many projects that week. So we're figuring it out as we go, and as you all have experienced, this situation changes regularly, and I'm sure whatever it is now will be different tomorrow, or at least in a week, and we'll be looking at various scenarios, coming up with contingencies. So it's a bit tricky.
Yeah.
But we hope to find a way to serve the people in the area where we work with the county government, we work with the school system in which we're going to be using. And so to really, and they've been wonderful in supporting us and welcoming us to their community. And so we hope to work with Catholic Charities and with our volunteers throughout the summer to still do what we can to provide service for them, as well as minister to the teens of our diocese.
Great, thanks. And Jamie works with you as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. Let's see, I'm gonna have Katie go next, but before you talk, I just wanna acknowledge the time. We had planned on transitioning at 2:15 to the non-camp model. We've got a lot of folks on here. I think this is worth sharing. So I think we'll continue the sharing, and it may be at 2:15 that we start talking about the new legislation when other folks join us as well. And I hope you can stay with us. If you can't, we are recording this and we'll share some notes afterwards. We just wanted to acknowledge we may not get to that in this first 45 minutes because there's so many people to share, which is great. Katie, tell us what's going on at REACH.
Yeah, I'm Katie with Reach Mission Trips, and actually my dad, I think, is on this call, but I don't see him, so I'm going to let him talk if he's here.
Mike, are you on the iPhone maybe?
Are you here? There he
is. There he is.
I am on the iPhone.
Great. I wondered that was you.
So basically, we have made a decision to move our camps from the actual campsites. We have 6 camps, and we're going to move them to online. So individual churches will have a work site at their hometown. So we're moving REACH to your hometown. And then after that, then at night, we'll work real hard at the virtual side of that. So we have the same camp in 20 different locations by way of video, by way of some slides. We'll take pictures. We'll have live worship here at REACH headquarters. And so we'll do a lot of video programming at night to kind of keep the extra stuff. One guy said that a youth leader can do a work site in their hometown, keeps them safe, keeps them a little more controlled. They can either do it at the church or a local facility that they can host at. So they have the camp feel, but they're wanting to be more connected with everybody else, the friends that they've known over the years. So our attempt is going to be to bring that whole thing virtual.
Wow, Mike, that's really interesting. I'm excited to hear the idea. I hope it works out. I wonder how many more governors and things will extend, the stay-at-home stuff. How is this affecting volunteer fees and things? I imagine folks are going to now be purchasing their own building supplies in their own hometowns without staff there. What are you doing with volunteer fees?
We're saying $150. We also, somebody mentioned before, the transparency. We're going to send out a letter that kind of says, hey, if you like REACH, you want to keep REACH going, we're going to need you to keep going and help us out. I mean, it puts us down to super bare bones, but yeah, each individual group would be in charge of their house and their food and their lodging. They can send their kids home at night, come back in the morning. They can do yard work with very little, all labor, not much materials, to whatever project they want. Partly depending on who they have in their church for expertise and that kind of thing. We are, so at 150, that'll get all the virtual stuff. We're also going to put up some webinars next week to talk about how do you get a work site? How do you look at a work site? What kind of volunteers are you going to need to make this work? What is our programming like? What's the connection of it? How do we process the Christian part of our camp, and why does it still feel good? So we're trying to keep people safe at home. We think they can decide within their own little community what they can do. We'll recommend exterior work, but yeah, we're going to do the seminars or the webinars to help train them as best we can.
Interesting. Thank you.
It all happened last Monday. It was pretty sad moment here. We were ready to, thinking we're going to shut the doors kind of deal. And I unfortunately, I know a lot of you are in that spot wrestling with it, but we've had some schools question us whether they want to be potentially liable for having kids in their school going out into their community. I think Walter mentioned that zero risk tolerance a couple weeks ago, and I've kind of taken that one to heart. And so we don't know when. Everybody keeps pushing deadlines, and now it's 10 people on June 10th, and then it's, I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's an end in sight that they're going to push that deadline down the road. So we said, all right, each individual group can do it on their own, and then we can do everything here, hopefully the connection piece of it. So we've had 1 week at wrestling with this, and we're going to launch it on Thursday. So it'll be out there. We didn't want to do it tomorrow because that's April Fool's Day. So we're doing it on Thursday.
That's very smart. Smart thinking. Well, thanks for sharing your innovative idea. Let's see. Nell, do you want to share?
I'm with Rutherford Housing Partnership in North Carolina. We're not a campsite. We're not the ones who gather the groups together, but we're one of the agencies that all of you work with. So my interest is, of course, trying to figure out if anybody, if all these valuable volunteers are even going to be able to come to Rutherford County. And so we're just in a wait and see. We've had a lot of our local church groups. Everybody's hesitating to be out and about. Well, we're not supposed to be out and about. So all of our work is sort of just stopped for now. And we're very small staff, just 3, and we're all working from home. But it will be interesting to see how this summer plays out, because it sure does make a big difference if these volunteers can work in these small counties that are out there. So we thank you, and we hope this works out.
Thanks, Nell. Scott? Scott Atnip, do you want to share? Are you there?
Sorry, yeah, I'm
You're
with
okay.
Brian.
Oh, great. Sorry. Jason?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good deal. Well, actually, we had a great week last week. Thanks to Christian Appalachian, like a year or two ago, we got several thousand N95 masks that we had in inventory. So we actually were able to go and send some of those things. I talked to my board, and we've got people in a number of different states, but we sent some to the New Jersey, New York area. We were able to send some to Florida, some to Minnesota, and distribute some locally, and realize we still have resources that can help people. There's such a big shortage of those masks. So that was a fun thing we were actually still able to do. Like a lot of the other people, we have the same situation, obviously, with the groups are kind of an unknown. We lost our spring break groups. Actually, all of them that were through the first week of June. First week of June group rescheduled towards the end of the summer. All the rest of them we did not get. Fortunately, some of them left funding, so we've got 2 houses that we still have just staff working on, and hopefully we're able to finish those up before we're on total lockdown. The other thing that we're doing, one of our larger programs that gets affected, is we have our families that we help out go through a 5-week financial training class. So it's like 5-hour-long sessions once a week. And that allows them to learn innovative ways to save $5 a day. They put it towards their projects. They've got skin in the game. Well, they put up to $250 into it. So it's a big part of our program, though, and they've got to do it to be able to be helped. So right now we're making that into an online version that's fully interactive. So they can actually just answer the questions online and whatnot. So that's another good thing that we're doing.
Great, thanks, Jason. For those of you who don't recognize the voice, Jason Benedict is with Good Neighbors in Kentucky.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, let's see here. I think that's everyone whose name is showing up. There's some phone numbers I don't recognize here. I'm not sure who everybody is on the phone. Let's see. I think Andy was the 859 area code. There's also a 518 area code. You wanna? Oh, and Allison. I'm sorry. There you go. No, go ahead, Allison.
So yeah, I'm Allison with Nazareth Farm. We're in North Central West Virginia. Yeah, so we are a stay-at-home order. We have we had a group in March. We had 40 volunteers that had to cancel in March, and then we had 2 upcoming weeks in April that were also canceled by the schools before we had to be the ones to do it, which was kind of nice. But we do currently have a policy in place for our summer schools so we do summer camp model. We own our own property. My staff are all full-time volunteers besides myself and one other person. And we all live on site. I have a house down the road, but the rest of them share like an 11-bedroom house together on the property. So we are all quarantined together, which is kind of nice to have lots of space and lots of people and lots of things to do because it's over 100-year-old property of houses and buildings. So we have a long list of tasks that we're just entertaining ourselves with until we feel like we can safely visit our more vulnerable neighbors and to work with them. So that's good for the property. And then, yeah, we are still discerning about the summer. We have had a few schools cancel. We are keeping non-refundable deposit. We have moved our final payment for any summer group is April 15th or 20th. So the schools that have canceled have not paid, so we have not had to refund, which is really nice. We're trying to avoid refunding as much as possible. So we do have shared it a few different times. We are encouraging schools to take credits for the upcoming year or for like the next year or the next time they would be able to come. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. In my mind, it's highly likely we won't have volunteers in the month of June, if not longer. Fortunately for us, because my staff live here, we could, if things turn around or we have students who can come, we could put together a full like service immersion retreat in a week. We don't need much notice, which is really nice for us. But yeah, I do feel like I have heard, students aren't wanting to travel, parents aren't wanting them to travel. It could be risky for them to have to travel from, like northern Indiana, but have to go through Chicago or go through Columbus, things like that. That's just going to make it risky for us to think about as well. But we have talked to some of our California schools about potentially looking at them coming in the fall. So for us, we have to obviously discern what's safe. And we also will only host what is our minimum size that we would host something. We're not going to put a bunch of resources in time for like 6 high school kids to come. Unfortunately, it's just not great. So like, how many schools do we need to make these weeks or push these weeks back? And we're basically able to do weeks any point of the year because we're here. And we do weeks all year throughout March and February and January and stuff too. One thing currently though is that we are seeing our college registrations for the next calendar year, which we usually ask by the end of April. They are not registering because they probably aren't sure what it's going to look like for them. So that's a few tens of thousands of income that usually comes in April and May that's not coming in right now that we're used to. Yeah, but our board is on it. They're from all over the country. Same with our volunteers. So we have a good pulse on what's going on. And we have a board meeting in the end of April, which I think will give us some more clarity, but mostly just talking with our volunteers.
Thanks, Allison. Sorry, I overlooked you. I've got 2 screens going here full of people. Let's see. Stephen? Do you want to share? Are you there, Stephen? You might need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I just jumped on just to hear what other people had going on. Bobby, our project manager, is out sick, and I just wanted to learn what I could today on his behalf. I'm with Blount County Habitat out of Tennessee.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's see, we've got a couple other folks on phone. Let's see, there's a 502 area code. Anybody want to claim that one?
What area code?
Sure, you can go ahead. 304. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's Mary Miller. I'm on the board of AdventureServe. I'm just listening in for a while.
Okay, thank you for joining us. That's great. Let's see, I think the 859 number was Andy with AdventureServe. And is there anyone else on the line that hasn't shared yet? All right, great. Well, we made it through everybody. Before we switch to start talking about legislation, are there any questions that anybody wanted to ask hasn't gotten a chance to yet? Is there anything you're wondering how others are handling?
This may be a longer conversation, but I'm curious, like we all as organizations, we're trying to think what's best for maybe our volunteers, but how many of you have started to reach out to your homeowners? How comfortable are they feeling with folks in their home? How soon? You know, as we start to think about if it is a possibility, do we just say, you know, everyone's wearing a mask when they're coming into your home? Or, you know, I'm just curious what people are saying or asking or thinking through, because I definitely don't also want to offend somebody.
Good question. Anybody want to answer that? Is anyone reaching out to families you're serving, homeowners, clients?
We have not yet, but it definitely is a consideration because we really focus and try to have our students work with and encourage that it's just as important for them to hang out with our homeowners as it is to finish the ramp. So whatever takes amount of time, we want them to get to know our homeowners. So I think for us, it's almost preempt, I don't know, like it is definitely a consideration, but I feel like I don't want to worry them. I know they already don't get it. I'm already having to explain the pandemic a lot to them, but and understand like why we're not working at their house. But yeah, I think especially once we have to say that it's going to be tough, that we are going to have to call our 80 homeowners and tell them the timeline's longer and why. But
yeah, I think that's probably like my biggest concern is most of the homeowner clients that we probably are all serving are those in that vulnerable population of for the disease or for the virus. And so how do we care for them, but yet they still need things fixed on their home to be able to live in it where we're all being forced to stay, you know? So how do we serve them without harming them?
One of the ways we're considering this at Blueprint, just in our staff meeting today, we have probably about 20 homes that we're anticipating working on during the summer if we run a full camp. And so essentially our construction directors are going through all of our potential applicants and looking at what are the potential outside projects, i.e. roofing, siding, et cetera, and prioritizing those towards the front of the list, knowing that if those were no contact or little contact, and again, it'd be a little bit of a stretch to do only that, but again, that's better than nothing. But I think, we're trying to look at our potential homeowners and kind of shift on what we might do first based on what would put at least risk and least contact.
We're calling all of our homeowners right now just to see if they have any, our previous ones and the ones that are in process with us. We try to keep long-time relationships going with them and just checking up on them. And some of them haven't been able to get groceries and stuff. So we're, delivering groceries and doing some of that kind of stuff. But for those that are in process, those that we've already been working on, we have really great relationships with them. And I think that Ron is right. all of them, every one of them would fall in the category of being the most vulnerable to this disease. Obviously, those are the homes we're generally working on. And so I think we have to really consider that seriously before we let a bunch of kids go into houses. And so I'm glad that question came up.
I mean, just logistically, a concern that I would have is, you know, even before the virus kind of hit its peak, I don't want to say peak, but like the news coverage began happening of it. I mean, even 3 weeks ago, we were having difficulty getting masks in our Home Depots and our groceries, you know. So I think that will be just one obvious question. If the expectation is for masks, where are people going to be getting those? Because right now the priority is to send those to healthcare.
I think my other question would be, is it appropriate to start, like, if we are vetting clients? Yes, I totally agree with you. Outside projects are the way to go. My husband actually does construction, and that's what he's sticking to right now is outside projects. But do we even ask, like, have you been in contact with someone who's had the virus within the last month, and so that disqualifies you? Like, I would hate for that to happen, but you know, we're also bringing students to your home, and I don't want us to create worse of a problem.
Well, and the challenge is people may not know if they've been around somebody, and, you know, it takes a while for symptoms to show. So folks just probably don't even know if you do ask. In about 2 minutes, we're going to transition to talking about non-camp model home repair stuff. And I think some of what we've already discussed will apply to those folks too. Some of those folks are already joining here. I hope that most of you can stick with us for the next little while. In case anybody does need to leave right at 2:15 Eastern, I did put a link in the chat box for something that I put together this morning, a payroll loan calculator. We'll talk in a little while about the new legislation and the SBA loan. It seems like banks are still waiting on guidance of exactly how the funds will be distributed, basically go through your own bank. But based on what I have read, there's certain information we could be gathering now to prepare ourselves to apply for those loans when the time comes. I'm not certain that there's enough funds for every single person who applies for it to get it, so it might be the early bird gets the worm. Might be worth getting your documents in order sooner than later if you want to make use of those funds. Let's see here. How about we start with just some quick introductions from the new folks who've joined us, and if you want to share your name, organization, location, and just a brief summary of what is going on in your organization right now, if anything has changed in the last week, if any big decisions have been made, or what your plans are. We're heading into the next few months with new restrictions and things. Let's see here. Bill, do you mind going first?
Sure. My name is Bill Newcomb. I'm the Executive Director of Cover Home Repair. We're a volunteer-based model in a rural area in New Hampshire and Vermont. It's a population area of about 100,000 people, but it's pretty scattered all over a very typically New England rural scene. We suspended all of our program, and we also run a thrift store as well as a volunteer urgent home repair program for low-income families. We suspended all operations on March 17th. We just, I think, like probably most of you, didn't want to spread the virus into a very vulnerable population to begin with. And many of our volunteers are over 65. So we just, we thought the better part of wisdom was at least to temporarily suspend operations. We have gone through a lot of contingency planning to set up most of my staff to work remotely, not necessarily doing our standard operations, which we've now redeployed a lot of people to help in some essential services like food delivery, either on a wholesale basis to the food shelves or on a retail basis to getting it from the food shelves home to people who need it. A lot of our staff are now calling all of the homeowners that we did projects for in 2019 to see how they're doing for fuel and food. Up here it's still pretty cold. I got an inch of snow last night. And probably 3/4 of our population that we serve are over 70 years old. So there's a lot of folks who are living alone and living in a pretty chilly environment. And most of the fuel subsidy money had already run out, although I understand as of this morning, there's been a new infusion of federal money to provide more fuel subsidy assistance money for people through the local CAP agencies. Probably the other thing that we've done, and this happened after Hurricane Irene in 2011, wiped out about 90% of the bridges and roads in most of New Hampshire and Vermont. We were very involved in recovery efforts then. And we were one of the founding members of an organization called Upper Valley Strong. And it was a coalition of a whole bunch of nonprofits, organizations that deal with the vulnerable populations that I suspect we're all serving, as well as some regional planning agencies, local town governments. And we've also now, in partnership with Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, which is the big teaching hospital attached to Dartmouth University. And the hospital has freed up its entire population health department to staff our coalition. And we now have operating, we meet remotely, obviously, twice a week. And there's a number of us who chair various committees. There's a food committee, there's a housing committee, there's a child care committee. We're doing a major effort to we've helped get 9 daycare centers up and rolling for medical health care workers and first responders who have child care needs that are no longer being able to be met. And I took the lead on the communications, and so we're sort of trying to roll out some critical messages, and we've got a lot of help from 3 or 4 doctors at the hospital helping us on some of the safety messaging for protocols for people and helping us work out. The biggest challenge right now is we're trying to funnel. There's about 3 organizations, including ours, that we probably have between the 3 of our organizations, probably about 2,000, a network of at least 2,000 volunteers. And there's a lot of people who want to help, but it's really tricky to help under the CDC protocols. But we are working on the safety protocols, and a number of the volunteers are working in food shelves and in food delivery. The volunteer opportunities or needs right now aren't very great, but we're about, at least according to the statisticians in this morning's conference call, in Vermont, New Hampshire, we're about we're going to get hit with a peak sometime between the 15th and the 20th of April. So it's a little bit, for us here, it's the calm before the storm, but we expect to get slammed. So that's the not so good news. But there's a tremendous amount of resources that are getting rolled out. We've had 2 foundations just proactively reach out and offer us additional funds, which has been great. On the other hand, we're now having to sort of re-envision ourselves in a very different mode where we're helping support other essential services, mainly the food shelves, the homeless shelters. One of our partners is a Twin Pines Housing Trust, and they have about 500 apartment units that they maintain and manage for low and moderate income families. And if their maintenance staff goes down and they get shorthanded, we had a lot of really good carpenters and plumbers and electricians on our network that we could deploy to help keep those units up and rolling. There's just a lot of new roles for us to play. And I'm sure it's the same for all of you. Things are changing every day. It's a little hard to keep track of the pace of change and stay on top of things. We're doing our best. So that's pretty much where we're at.
Thanks, Bill.
Becca, can I just make a request? Is it possible to get some kind of contact list with everybody that's participating on these meetings, just for future reference and collaboration and practices?
Yep. We can send a list out of everybody's names and organizations with emails who's
Thank you so
participated.
much. Thank you.
Yeah. In order to expedite some things, I know we do want to talk about the new legislation. I'm afraid we might not get there if we have everybody share. Those of you who haven't yet introduced yourself, if you don't mind typing in the chat box just for a minute, if you can just say your name, your organization, location, maybe a sentence or 2 about what's happening right now. I think that will help us. I don't want to gloss over anybody. What y'all are doing is really important. We've gotten a lot of good information, but I do want to make sure we get a chance to talk about the new legislation. If anybody is unable to type in the chat box for any reason, if you want to go ahead and share right now, maybe if you're on the phone, for example, is there anybody who wants to share briefly, verbally, who hasn't yet?
Yeah, this is Tim from Habitat for Humanity, Greenville County. We're kind of doing the same thing right now. We're, tentatively scheduling a Stockholm back to work on Friday, but things are just running slow, and home pres is going to be shut down for a period of time because we can't go in and out of the homes.
It looks like we got a lot of folks chiming in the chat box. Thank you. So in the first 45 minutes, we talked with a bunch of organizations that we're calling Camp Model, mostly mission trip groups that are coming in. Everybody's trying to figure out what to do. Now we've got a lot of other folks joining us with different program models using local volunteers and staff that do repairs, maybe hiring contractors as well. But I think the legislation that's recently come out is probably going to be applicable to everybody, regardless of what your program model is. I am definitely not an expert on this, and so I'm going to open some conversation and offer some points for us to discuss, but please correct me if I say anything that seems to be inaccurate or is different than what you have read elsewhere. So there's actually been 3 different bills, I believe, that have been passed already, and there probably is going to be a 4th one eventually, maybe in late April. I don't know a lot about the first one. I don't think that one's very relevant to us, but I don't know. The second one was called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. That's the one that passed on March 19th. And it includes a complex set of temporary paid leave mandates. There's employer reimbursement provisions, and then there's funding for virus testing, food nutrition security, and unemployment extension. So it looks like, from my research anyway, the information that is applicable to our nonprofits is the 2 weeks of emergency paid sick leave. That applies to employers with less than 500 employees. And basically, if you need up to 2 weeks to either quarantine or seek a diagnosis for preventative care for the virus, it would fund up to $511 per employee per day, or 2/3 payment of the regular rate if they need to care for a family member due to the virus or because the child care situation or school is closed. I'm curious if anybody has looked at that and is planning on using that in any way to support their employees during this time. Is that something that's helpful for anybody or not necessarily? It sounds like most folks are just working from home.
I'm currently studying it, as well as the 3rd one that you're going to mention next on the CARES Act, and I'm meeting with someone later who already has applied for both of these. So I'm doing research, but and most likely we may apply for it. I really like that it's intermittent paid leave of 80 hours, so that the staff that are full-time that might need to care for kids 3 days out of the week as opposed to 5 days, we could do it that. I mean, it definitely looks attractive. I just haven't figured out all the steps for it yet.
Sure. And it looks like the way that it's being funded to the organizations is that it's a reimbursable payroll credit. So basically, it would come out of your normal payroll taxes, the funds that you're using to pay employees out of this. There's also the 12 weeks of emergency family leave medical act, but that law exempts small businesses with fewer than 50 employees, so I don't think that's probably applicable to most of our organizations. That was everything I got out of the Families First Coronavirus Act. Does anybody else have anything to share about that one? It seems like that one's probably less help to most of us. Go ahead.
Just one comment on the 12 weeks paid leave. It's not clear yet whether if you have under 50 employees, whether or not you'll be exempted from that. They won't even write the regulations till sometime in April, which puts you in a real tough bind, because if you decide to lay someone off, by today, you're not on the hook for that. But if you wait till tomorrow, you may be on the hook. I mean, if your entire staff gets sick, that's a fairly substantial commitment of funds that a lot of organizations may not have the cash buffer to fund. But it isn't clear yet. They haven't written the regulations, so we don't really know if it's going to apply to those of us who have under 50 employees. I mean, we have 11 employees, so it's.
Thanks for clarifying that, Bill. Appreciate that. Okay, let's take a look at the newest legislation, the CARES Act, which just passed, was signed on Friday, March 27th. It seems like information's coming out fast and furiously. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm getting multiple emails in my inbox a day from every source about it. So trying to put together everything, figuring out what's the most helpful. The first, probably smallest, easiest one to talk about is the charitable giving incentive, which I think is something we could consider when seeking donations and thinking of any fundraising that happens later this year. Is that there's a new universal deduction that people who don't typically itemize their deductions will now be able to deduct up to $300 in charitable donations for the 2020 tax year. And so how much folks save on that, I guess, depends on their tax bracket. I think it's between 11% and 37%, basically, that they then are not paying taxes on. And then for those folks who do itemize their deductions already, it raises the threshold of how much they can deduct from their giving, raises it from 60% of their adjusted gross income to 100%, which might be something relevant to, major donors, folks who have a lot of funds, who give a lot. And so I think that's great information. I don't know how much there is that we can do with this. I run a local women's giving circle, and we've been sending out our tax receipts from the last event, and we've been just including information about this new deduction with the tax receipts, just to make sure people know to save the receipt, hold on to it. Maybe they don't normally because they don't itemize their deductions, but just to let folks know that it might be helpful for them come tax time next year. Does anybody have any comments on the charitable giving incentive? Is there any way that you all are considering that in your fundraising plans for this year? Okay, we'll move on. The next one I was reading about is the Paycheck Protection Program loans, which is a SBA 7A loan. I was trying to wrap my mind around it this morning, and based on some information that I read, I put together a payroll loan calculator, and I put a link to that spreadsheet in the chat box. I can't not guarantee that it is 100% correct. The guidance has not yet come out to the banks, but my understanding is that we'll be able to apply through commercial lenders that are already set up to make SBA loans. So probably your normal bank is who you would be contacting for that. And the SBA has 15 days from when the bill was signed to issue the guidance, which would mean an application form, a process, instructions, that kind of thing. But it's possible it could come sooner, maybe even as early as the end of this week. But the money is going to be in high demand, and so it's probably a good idea to get your documents in order if that's something you want to apply for. There's no fees for applying. There's no personal guarantees required, no collateral. Some portions of the loans will be forgiven, so it turns into essentially a grant. It's going to be a low interest rate for those who don't have it forgiven. And so basically you need to calculate what your monthly payroll cost is for the 12 months before you apply. And then you can multiply that by 2.5, and that would either be the loan amount, or if you're a really huge organization, the maximum is 10 million. And then you would have 8 weeks to spend those funds after you get the loan. And if those funds are spent on payroll, rent, utilities, mortgage interest, and any other interest from debt that you incurred before February 15th. And if those funds are not spent on payroll for people making more than 100,000, then that portion would be forgiven. There are some other caveats. I understand that they want to count how many employees, how many FTEs you had during a certain previous time frame, and compare it to the number of employees you have during the 8 weeks that the loan is in place. Basically, they don't want you to be laying off people. And so there's a ratio that you can calculate for that. I'm curious who is considering applying for this. Is this going to be something that's helpful? I would imagine a lot of folks are, yes. Are you starting to gather documents, figuring out how to go about this? Has anybody tried to contact their bank yet, see what they said?
It's Jennifer from UM Army, and yes, Wells Fargo is our bank. They're not yet set up, but they are working on it, and I am collecting the documents. But this is very helpful, Becca. Thank you.
Hi, this is Harold with Good Neighbors in Pennsylvania. We've just had communication back from the person who is in charge of basically community banking, and they say they're going to be accepting applications as early as Friday. So we're going to start today accumulating the information so that we can apply hopefully by the end of this week.
Great.
This is Mike
curious
with
if any-
Reed. Oops. Go ahead.
I'm just curious if anybody's ever gone through the SBA loan process.
Hey, Ben.
I'm good. I want a Zoom call.
Mike, did you want to share something?
We're talking to our bank now, and this is intriguing because I was working on just a basic loan, and now maybe to transfer over to the SBA. What kind of strings are attached to these things? I mean, how much control are they going to want? What kind of I'm nervous about how much they might want to, how many strings are attached. So I don't know.
My understanding is it's an unsecured loan, but that's something you definitely want to confirm with your bank. But if it's unsecured loan, the risk is all the government's, no risk to you. Traditionally, the problem with the SBA loans has been it's been a boatload of paperwork, just like with FDA loans or grant programs for low-income rural homeowners. The same thing. It's just a lot of paperwork for not a whole lot of money.
Yeah. I've had some experience with SBA through the Sandy recovery, but actually from a homeowner's perspective, and there was a ton of red tape and a ton of paperwork. So it wasn't the easiest process to go through.
I would just suggest before you go too far down that process, I'm sure this is on Becca's list, and I don't want to preempt your list, but the $600 federal unemployment bonus, if you will, is a pretty intriguing option.
Can you speak more to that?
I can. Unemployment insurance varies state to state, so I'll just use Vermont as an example. I'm sure you all know your own unemployment requirements better than I'm ever going to know. In Vermont, if you make $16 an hour, for example, and your qualified wages, generally you end up with about 50% of what you're making. So to make the math simple in this example, you get about $8 a month, which for my staff, there's nobody in my staff who could live on $8 a month. They're having a hard enough time living on 16. And I'm just using that example. Some are paid less than that, some are paid more than that. But my understanding, and I'm trying to confirm this, but the information came from Senator Sanders' office, so it's at least from one of the senators who passed the bill, is the feds are going to put $600 per week on top of what your state is doing. So if you take the math, if you take $600 divided by 40, that's $15 an hour. So if you take the $8 you're going to get from the state of Vermont, and then add the $15 you're going to get from the feds, you're going to make you're going to make more money by being laid off than staying on the payroll. And the duration is either 3 or 4 months. I've not yet been able to confirm which it is. I've heard some say 3, some say 4. But right now, I have my 2 team leaders looking at that possibility, because I think there's some people, my staff, are going to prefer that. And that's going to help us preserve existing cash that I might otherwise have to spend on payroll. So this to me is a very, very intriguing. The other question is, how fast are the feds going to make the money available? And is that going to come through the state, or is it going to be a direct check? It's not. There's a lot of details that aren't clear yet. And I don't want to pull a trigger on something like that until we know that we're not asking the employees to walk a plank that just has a big dollar sign painted on it. That's as much as I know. And this is just in the last 24 hours. So.
Thanks, Bill. I put in the chat box a link to the Council of Nonprofits analysis of the CARES bill, and then I pulled out the information about this expanded unemployment insurance that Bill mentioned with the $600 per week. The next one on my list is the Emergency Economic Injury Grants, and this says, I guess my understanding is that this would be part of the payroll loan, but basically that you could receive up to $10,000 within 3 days of applying based on your organization's credit score. So I could be wrong, but from my understanding, the reading, that's not a separate grant. It's just a way to expedite the money that you'd be applying for in the first loan situation. I don't know how long it would take to get the funds otherwise. There's also a section about self-funded nonprofits, basically organizations that don't pay unemployment. And so it reimburses those self-funded nonprofits for half the costs of benefits provided to their laid-off employees. That seems like a pretty specific thing that probably doesn't apply to most of us. So then there is an employee retention payroll tax credit. And that's a refundable payroll tax credit of up to $5,000 for each employee on the payroll. However, if you take out the Paycheck Protection Loan, the SBA loan, then you're not eligible for this credit. So this would be something separate. You'd have to pick between the two of them. And so if you chose to go this route, you would have to show that your revenue had dropped at least 50% in the first quarter of 2020 as compared to the first quarter of 2019. And then the amount of credit you'd get would continue for every quarter until your revenue exceeds 80% of what you received in that same quarter last year. So it's a little bit trickier to calculate. I'm not sure what the situation would be where that would be more appealing than the paycheck loan. Is anybody looking at that one, the employee retention credit? Nope, not so much. Okay. There's also delayed payment of payroll taxes, which allows employers to delay the payment of the employer portion of payroll taxes. 2020, you could pay equal halves of it at the end of 2021 and 2022. I guess that could be a good option to me. It seems like more of an administrative headache probably to figure out how to not pay those amounts now and pay them later. Is that something that anyone is looking at? Nope. Okay. Let's see here. There's also an Economic Stabilization Fund as a part of the CARES Act. It looks like that is for much larger organizations that have between 500 and 10,000 employees, and it's a true loan. There's no forgiveness that turns that one into a grant. I don't think that'll be applicable to anybody on the line here. Let's see, then of course the CARES Act also has the direct payments, the checks that are coming in the mail to most Americans. It has that unemployment insurance expansion that we talked about. And then it also had an amendment to the new paid leave mandates. So it lowers the amount that employers must pay for paid sick and leave that was in the Families First Act. So I think it lowered it just by, it says it's now $511 per day for employee sick leave or $200 per day for family leave. So it sounds like the main thing that everybody's looking at is the SBA loans. And it's hard to provide much guidance on that because it hasn't come out yet. But it's something we'll just keep in touch with each other about. It sounds like something by next Tuesday when we have our next webinar, we'll probably know a lot more about it. Folks will probably be able to apply by then. Are there any questions that anybody has? And I cannot necessarily answer them, but what questions you all have about the new legislation and how home repair nonprofits might be able to use them to their benefit?
I don't have a particular question with that, but all the links on here, have you sent all those to Becca? They're very helpful, all the different ones that you're putting on the chat.
I've not yet. I've just been accumulating this morning, but I will do an email afterwards and we'll make sure that we get them out to everybody.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you. So nobody's read the 850-page CARES Act? I was teasing.
Good bedtime reading. Well, we have about 20 minutes left. I know I cut people off from sharing what's going on right now, but for folks who are using local volunteers normally or hiring contractors, is anyone still currently operating? Is anyone still completing home repairs or making plans to figure out when and how to start offering something?
This is Andy Jones at Warm in Wilmington. We're utilizing some of our staff to continue to do outside repairs for some of our other homes where a contractor may be involved, again, outside repairs only at this point and with the homeowner's permission. So roofing, stairs and landings, wheelchair ramps, that sort of thing that we can get done outside.
Great.
This is Trent Davison.
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is Trent Davison, Red Lion, Pennsylvania. And we stopped doing work in the homes. We had one roof project we were halfway through, so we finished that one today. But what we've started doing, I apologize if Leisha might have already shared this, but we've been doing a new program that we just started last week called Caring Voices, where we've been reaching out to all of our homeowners that we've ever served, about 900 homeowners. And we're using volunteers to try to call all of them and check in on them on a regular basis to see if they have any unmet needs, such as food scarcity, or if they need help getting prescription drugs, things like that. So that was just started middle of last week, and it's been going really well. It's been a great opportunity to reach out to some folks that we haven't talked to in a while and just check in on their needs. So that's one way that we're kind of pivoting to still minister in a time when we can't really get out and be inside people's homes.
That's great. Thanks for sharing, Trent.
Don Taylor from Chesapeake Housing Mission. So we've completed several critical projects in March, but we have put our services available to the local health departments and will respond on an emergency basis. We are using staff. We have a couple of volunteer groups that have offered, but again, it would be limited to outside unless it was a severe emergency, and then we would respond.
So I'd imagine that right now most folks' energy is being spent on figuring out, contingency plans and canceling things and checking in on staff and all of that. If and when the time comes that most of your regular activities have ceased, most decisions have been made, are there any thoughts on how you might shift staff roles? Would you maybe try to have more folks working on grant writing than usual, or any other income generating activities? Or I love the wellness check idea that Trent shared about servants. Is there anybody else who's thinking about how to shift your employees' activities?
So this is Trevor with the restoration team in Houston, and they just announced a few minutes ago that Houston, Harris County is extending our quarantine through the end of this month, which is on par with, I think, everybody else. But we've been thinking about that a lot and working a little bit with some of our local congregations that support us with volunteers and finances and stuff. Have set up food pantries, and so pivoting some of our staff to help manage the volunteers and the access to those food pantries during the week to take some of that burden off of our local churches that have gotten those set up, just so it's not the same handful of people day in, day out. They've had a good response with volunteers and stuff, and so that's one of the things we're looking at. And then also taking this time to kind of create some training videos and just a little more content that we can plug to our volunteers as they prepare, whether it's for summer or just regular things, safety videos, and kind of doubling down on some of our training with our staff and trying to get some things caught up on that we hadn't really had time with. But hopefully we'll be able to get some good video content created during this time.
Anybody else have thoughts on employees shifting roles? Let's see, Andy wrote in the chat box, development team coordinating, making masks and utilizing specialized volunteers for that. They're utilizing all staff in food delivery where appropriate through their partner organizations in the community. That's great. That's Wilmington Area Rebuilding Ministry. And they're also writing notes and doing well checks to homeowners. How's everybody's staff doing? Last week, those of you who were on, we talked a bit about just what we were doing to support our staff working from home, how to maintain a sense of camaraderie, and to help with morale. How, what are you all doing about that this week? Or any new ideas, or folks who weren't here last week who can share about thoughts on how to support staff working remotely?
We just have a Zoom call every day just so we can see each other's face. I think is to try to somewhat keep connected a little bit.
Great.
Yeah, we do a Zoom call every morning, do prayer requests, things like that, and then cover the business of the day. And then we started every Friday afternoon for at least an hour. We get together and have game time. So there's some online gaming programs you can use with Zoom. Best one's probably called Jackbox.tv. And so you can play trivia games, different things like that. So just something to keep it light on a Friday afternoon heading into the weekend.
That's fun. I didn't know you could play games in Zoom. Thanks for that info,
Oh, yeah.
Trent.
It's good stuff.
See, Carson wrote in the chat box. Sorry, go ahead. Alicia, you're playing it? Cool. Carson wrote in the chat box, it's a good time to study up on nonprofit management, marketing, etc. There's plenty of books that he's wanted to read and has never really had time until now. I'll also put a plug in for your Reframe membership. Probably most of you haven't had time to do a deep dive into what all is available in our membership portal. So I encourage you to take some time to look through our resource library full of documents. We do have recordings of lots of past webinars, even just our membership benefits that we offer. Maybe you haven't read through them. There might be some things that you would have time to look into now that you haven't previously. I'm also going to put in a shameless plug for Reframe Online, which is our first ever virtual conference. We were supposed to have 4 regional events this spring in Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Kansas, but they've all, of course, been canceled. But we have been rescheduling all of our some of our speakers from those events to a virtual conference that's now available to all of our members, regardless of where you are located. I think it's going to be a really great event. It is, I should put the link to it in the chat box. It's April 23rd and 24th. It's basically 5 webinars on each day. There's going to be 10 different sessions overall from a variety of topics ranging from compassion fatigue to trauma-informed, person-centered care, healthcare as housing. We've got someone from the VA up in Washington talking about how to get home repair grants for veterans. We have a wide range of topics. We don't expect that everyone who registers will attend everything, but there should be multiple sessions of interest to everybody. It's just it's $15 for members and it's $30 for non-members. So it's really affordable and could be a good way to get in some additional professional development. And also some additional networking and support with our Reframe peers. So look into that if you're interested. We've got about 10 minutes left here. Does anybody have any questions that you wanted to ask or situations that you want to seek advice upon or suggestions to offer? Is there anybody who's come up with a creative solution to challenges that we're facing that might be helpful to others?
So I know of a few more residential camps that are floating around on Facebook that are doing like virtual day camps to try to just give kids who are sitting at home something to do. And I'm like, I wonder if there's a way to do the type of things that we are aiming to do, you know, helping kids to serve, to love, you know, to care for folks around us, that folks are out there doing. In addition, I think a lot of these folks who are doing these virtual camps are hoping then that they'll get some more investment from folks that'll, you know, then see them come later, sign up more. So I'm curious, is anyone out there thinking through how do I virtually engage my community to be service oriented when we can't physically go and be service oriented.
This is Aaron in Iowa. You know, I think that one of the things that I'm always, there's always top of mind for me in a crisis is that it's easy to feel like the car is going at the right speed if you're driving. And if you're not the one driving, you're on a curvy road, it's pretty terrifying. So finding a way to make people feel like they're more in the driver's seat, I think is pretty critical. I think the masks are something that people have seized upon. Something we've been batting around but haven't run with yet is Quarantine Clean. Basically doing a one bag litter pickup challenge for people. We're not totally quarantined here, so you know, we can. We have a lot of people going out for walks and just picking up litter while they do it, engaging with some youth. That's kind of the thing we've been batting around on that.
Great, thanks for sharing, Aaron. And I love the happy giggles in the background. I have to say, as someone who always works from home, often with little children who pop into my office, it's nice for me to feel like more folks are in that situation now, and there's a little more compassion for everybody in that situation. Maybe go ahead.
Was the question about being in service at this time? How to be in service? Is
yeah, and I think Jenna's question was how to do it maybe virtually, but sure, I think that's a great question in general. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think what we're kind of, this is Hannah with Ozark Mission Project. What we come back to is that to be in service right now is unfortunately not to be using our hands and feet to help others, which is so hard, obviously, for nonprofits like us who are motivated to be useful bodies. But at this time, we are trying to communicate with our constituents, our volunteers, our neighbors, that the way we can be in service right now to everyone is to lay low. And it's so hard, and it's a hard, it goes against everything that we talk about all the time. But that's what we're trying to communicate with everyone.
Thanks, Hannah. Does anyone else have a question or?
So as part of our, I don't have a question, Becca, but I did want to just add on to what Hannah said, and you know, as some of the camp model portion of our youth's responsibilities with UM-Army is that every day there's a chore chart or a cleaning chart, you know, some way for them to chip in. You know, what if we just encourage our young people to do those jobs at their own home, you know, or prepare a meal for a neighbor, or go and mow a yard. Grass is still going to grow this summer, you know, and potentially there are going to be people in our neighborhood, vulnerable individuals, that don't want to get out. So just creatively, and I would challenge us to put the impetus of that back on our student volunteers and ask them, put them in a position where they can creatively think about how they could serve in their area and in their own community, maybe their own street, right? And so as long as they're able to be outdoors, but not necessarily around someone else, you know, they can bake cookies and leave them on the porch for someone, or do something you know, small. But I think that could have a big impact on people who are feeling very alone at this time.
Thanks, Brian.
I'm going to put my minister hat on for a second and echo what Brian said. You know, one of the things when I would lead, whether it was students or adults on trips to different places, one of the things I would always try to impress upon them is, you know, you don't have to get on an airplane to go on a mission trip. And you can go right across the street, and there's lots of things that we can do. You know, our girls have, we've taken them around with sidewalk chalk back when we could just kind of leave the house. we went around with sidewalk talk to some of the folks of the church, and just popped into their driveway, left some little messages on their sidewalk. One of our neighbors here put some chalk out by the end of their sidewalk to give to the younger kids in the neighborhood. And as I've taken walks now in the last couple of days, there's a bunch of driveways with chalk on them that folks have just gone by and done. There's some little pebbles that somebody in the neighborhood has painted on a black flat rock and just put those underneath everybody's mailbox. Just some different little touch ways that you can let people know that you're thinking about them and caring about them. And, we are all in this together, but just however we can impress that it doesn't take getting on a bus or getting on an airplane to do a mission trip. So many times it can be right across the street.
Thanks, Amy. Does anyone else have any final comments to share? Well, I will follow up by putting together a list as best as I can of everyone who's here. There's a few folks I think are on the phone that I'm not sure who they are, but for the most part, I think I've got a list of everybody who's participated. Please know that we're doing this every Tuesday for as long as it is helpful. And so 1:30 Eastern every Tuesday, we have gathering camp model organizations, and then 2:15 any other type of home repair organizations. It's the same video conference call information every time. I have set up a Google Calendar invitation that covers the next 4 weeks. If you don't already have that and want it, just type a note in the chat box or shoot me an email and I can send that to you. And I will also follow up with it in that email with the list. I'll include the links that are in the chat box, as well as the registration link for Reframe Online. Just thinking of you all as everybody's navigating these difficult times. You don't have to wait until next week to reach out if you have any particularly pressing questions or if you come across some great resources. I'm not sure if everyone is in our Facebook groups, but we do have 2 different Facebook groups that are closed for our members. There's one that's called Reframe Executive Directors, that's just for EDs and senior staff. And then we have another one that's open to all Reframe members. And we typically post links and questions and have some discussion on there as well in between our webinars. So look for that, or shoot me an email if you need a link directly to any of those groups. But thank you all so much for the good work that you're continuing to do despite these really challenging times. It's encouraging to hear all the different creative ways that everybody is coming up with to still fulfill our missions and support staff and volunteers and families, of course. So keep up the great work and let us know if there's anything else that Reframe can do to support you. Thank you, everybody. Hope to see some of you next week.
Thanks,
Bye, all.
Becca. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
See you, Harold.